I got a question from Ask Yourself via email. That's the name of his YouTube channel, Ask Yourself. And he was just asking in general whether or not I ever debated meat eaters on my channel. He actually used the term carnists. So carnist suggests that as an ideology you actively believe in and defend meat eating. And I said, no, I don't. I haven't. But it's mostly because I invite all kinds of people on the channel, and we find out who accepts, we find out who's into it, find out who's not, on a case-by-case basis. There are a lot of vegans who openly say they find me too intimidating. They don't want to appear on the channel. They're afraid to chat with me. And I assume that most people we meet would also not want to talk to me. But the question for me sparks a kind of broader, more interesting topic to reflect on, which is the difference between these so-called debates that are now popular on YouTube between meat eaters and vegans and what real debates in real life are like when I talk to people who really eat meat. First and foremost, when I talk to people in real life, I have mentioned this at some point in the channel 2 years ago or something. Most of the time, those people are talking to me not because they're interested in veganism, but because they're interested in me. They're interested in who I am. They're interested in what I'm doing with my life and why I do it. So I was just chatting with my girlfriend here about this. If you asked me why have I had so many conversations about veganism with coworkers or at university with other students and professors, I would say first and foremost it's because those people find me intriguing, or there's something about me they don't understand. There's something they want to know more about. They want to dig into about me. Obviously, even within Buddhism, when I was a scholar of Buddhism, most scholars of Buddhism eat meat. It's not only not vegan, they're not vegetarian. So those issues came up all the time within Buddhism. But I mean, conversation with, say, a coworker from one heterosexual man to another, just say as the scenario. Obviously, sometimes I talk to women, sometimes I talk to gay men. But most of those conversations would be really short, really reflective, really serious, really taciturn. But, a person would ask me about being vegan. I'd give my answer. And then they'd sit there kind of looking at the floor saying, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of response you often get, is people being thoughtful, taking it seriously, having nothing to say back to you. You know what I mean? And it's so different from like the theatrical, over-the-top format of YouTubers sitting down and crossing swords and coming up with one ridiculous excuse after another for meat eating, or saying, oh, well, what percentage of people get cancer from drinking milk and this kind of thing. Yeah,
when I told my coworker that I didn't eat eggs because I had bought a cake for her birthday, and it was a vegan cake. And, I said I don't use eggs, and she asked why. And once I explained, she said she had never thought about it. And that was really like the end of the conversation. She just said, I had never thought about it,
Yeah.
So
that's it. Yeah.
And she's in her 60s, so this. Yeah.
One of the most surreal and extreme examples I had was actually in a fitness shop. One of these shops that sells bodybuilding protein. So like the whole shop, like 90% of what they got
vitamin shop, right?
Yeah, but like shelves and shelves of the bodybuilder protein. They have a few other products, but like they don't sell weight equipment or whatever. So it's mostly supplements. And this guy came out and talked to me, and he was super hyped up to pitch me, do a sales pitch. I guess he didn't recognize me or didn't remember me, but I had actually talked to him before in that shop. But anyway, he came up to me and spoke to me as a complete stranger, and he was trying to sell me, these protein supplements that are variously based on whey protein. And there's also a fad for a while on blood protein, cow blood, yeah. Because cow blood is a waste product of the meat industry, and, they make it into fertilizer and other stuff. But anyway, and at the time I knew some particular factoid about whey protein. Several of the vegan doctors like to really lay into it as like proven to cause cancer or whatever. I don't remember, but I said, look, this whey protein, I mean, it's really unhealthy, and and I forget if it was that I said it caused cancer or some other specific factoid about it. And the guy said to me, and again, he was all kind of hyped up and cheery. He came bounding out the door to try to pitch me these, various meat-based protein supplements. And he said, well, but that's the thing, isn't it? Everything does. Like, everything causes cancer. Everything's bad for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to him...
Yeah, I hear people say that all the time as an excuse. Like, well, you're going to get cancer anyways.
Right. No, but this is the thing. So I said to him, I didn't respond in like a catty or angry way. I responded in this kind of thoughtful way after a pause, I was like, I'm vegan, so, nothing in my diet does. Like, but honestly, I was thinking about it that way. You know what I mean? We kind of look up and you're thinking like, no, look, I don't have any of these carcinogens or anything in my diet.
Yeah.
And he almost started crying. He became so upset. He had that look on his face. It's a little bit different for heterosexual men and women. But he started to get tears in his eyes. And he put his head down. He turned around. He walked out of the room like almost running. He was so upset. It was really weird. I mean, it was really weird. But I think for him, the cognitive dissonance he lives with is exactly that he's selling stuff that he knows is unhealthy as health food. Like, I assume that's attention, though. Like, I assume he's not that dumb. Like, he's not so stupid that he actually thinks he's selling people a good product. Is this way. So, I would guess it's also all the issues vegan gains like to talk about where, he knows the reality is that steroids provide these outcomes, not these, protein powders and so on. That was a really, really strange, unique, extreme example of someone responding that way. But I just say when you think about the word debate, there are a lot of issues, political issues, I really have debated with people, like First Nations. What's the future of Indigenous peoples? What's the future of endangered languages like Korean, Ojibwe? What's the future of Pali scholarship, of Theravada Buddhism? There are all kinds of religious and political and other topics that I debate with people at length. But most of the time with veganism, I think because it's so heavy and it cuts so close and people live with such a sense of unresolved guilt and responsibility and so on. I mean, most of the time, whether it's a coworker or someone at the university, they come to you with a question, and again, the response is more on the lines of, yeah, that's right. Every time you eat a hamburger, somewhere a cow is having its throat cut, and they know it and never really thought about it and don't really deal with it. But so there is no debate.
Yeah. I've definitely debated with my father about it.
Yeah.
A lot, many times.
Yeah.
But it just never resolves, and he's not convinced to even reduce me.
I think, one of the funny things, I said this to Mod Vegan in response to one of my own videos, I use these examples like cigarette smoking and seatbelts. Instead of comparing veganism to the abolition of slavery, I tend to use these down-to-earth pragmatic comparisons to, let's compare it to getting laws to require seatbelts, the step-by-step eradication of cigarette smoking from our society. Where, we've only taken a few steps on that road. We're far from having, erased cigarettes from our culture society. But, I think one of the other funny things that those causes have in common with veganism, unlike slavery, unlike many other moral and religious and ethical questions, is that they're really based on indisputable facts. Nobody is debating whether or not cigarettes are healthy. And forget the word healthy. Nobody is debating whether or not cigarettes are good, because there's an ethical component to it. Do you give your own children cigarettes?
Yeah.
And by the way, I heard that discussed in one of the only populations that does. Korean Ojibwe people, because they use tobacco in religious ceremonies, they do sometimes give tobacco to children.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It comes up in that context. But seatbelts, again, forget kind of healthy, forget life-saving versus number of deaths versus number of injuries. If you just use the word good, are seatbelts good? It's on this kind of level of indisputable fact where there's nothing to debate. So that's interesting. On this channel, we do talk about a lot of debates within veganism that I think are important and ongoing and confusing. And, they'll change the future of the vegan movement. The same way in the last 5 years, we've seen veganism take on, a bunch of different directions and not make too much progress in any one of them. That's okay. Bit by bit, we're like a can of tomato soup rolling down a staircase. We make progress one way or another. You're not quite sure which way the can's going to fall, but it's rolling in this direction. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think it is funny because framing veganism in terms of a debate, in terms of something meat eaters and vegans are going to sit down and rationally hash out that way, I don't see it that way at all. Again,
any carnist side is going to be unreasonable.
Right.
It's really
right. But
you're really just trying to have a debate with somebody that can't be reasonable. I tried many times, but it just seemed like a waste of my time.
You say that, but no, I disagree in the following sense. I think the number one counter argument is I don't care.
Right.
Right. And I mean, that's why I always shift the debate from dealing with facts. And again, I think the facts are on our side, to dealing with the question of what kind of person are you? What kind of person do you want to be? And, what kind of person am I? I know it's really common to say I'm vegan for the animals. I don't say that. I'm vegan because of who I am, because of the kind of person I want to be. You know what I mean? And again, I've made this comparison long ago, but I don't refuse to use cocaine because I don't want my money going to support guerrilla warfare in Colombia. That is a legitimate reason to refuse cocaine, because you're paying money and it's going to criminals and armed rebels and what have you, okay? No, the reality is ultimately, we could say that. We could pretend that's why we don't use cocaine. I don't use cocaine because of the kind of person I am, and in future the kind of person I aspire to be. So it's about me. It's about who I am. And most of the time when I'm talking to meat eaters, that's why they're talking about veganism, is because they're interested in who I am. Again, whether it's a coworker or colleague or what have you. And then the answer is, ultimately what I'm putting on them is, look, this is a question of who do you want to be? What kind of person? Do you want to be the person who makes the excuse or says they just don't care about the ecological aspects, the ethical aspects, animal rights aspects, and the health aspects? Do you want to be the person who has the heart attack who says you don't care, or do you want to be the person who's responsible for slitting the cow's throat who says I don't care? So again...
Yeah, you're good at staying calm in those situations too. Yeah. For me, it's really hard just to have someone say that they don't care. It's like, how can you not care? You're a horrible person. I don't actually say that. But I just
right. But I think that's exactly what I'm saying. It's not debate. We're not going to debate whether or not I'm a horrible person and whether or not somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The word debate has to mean something. At some point, we're not having a debate anymore. The question is, what kind of person do you want to be?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it is harder for women both ways, because I also think women are very cruel to other women. That's why a couple times in the video I've said, as one heterosexual man talking to another heterosexual man, I think that I am very good at. I've mentioned this before, heterosexual men don't like it when you bullshit them. They don't like it when you beat around the bush. They don't like it when you're indirect or snarky or what have you. And, I've seen this, with my ex-wife and with other women and other girlfriends or what have you. And you can even see it on YouTube. And I think all the debates have been pretty much met. No, Vegan Gates did debate with one woman, with Roaming Millennial, right?
Yeah.
But I think the way that women talk about these issues is different, and the burden on women, their role in cooking and traditional culture and everything else. I think there are many, many ways in which it can be harder if it's a woman with a female colleague, and just what the boundaries are and so on. Because with me, ultimately, if it's a male colleague who's bullying me or pushing me around or something, it's like, dude, do you want to step outside?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say it, but again, we've talked about this in different contexts. That comes up often in my life. The indirect reality of the fact that peace is in the shadow of war, and that good manners are in the shadow of violence, all the time, as men dealing with men in the workplace or in the schoolyard or what have you. But at the same time, that kind of keeps it on the straight and narrow. I think a lot of the times with women, there isn't that awareness of limits, and women will just be unbelievably cruel and insulting and vile to one another. Again, in the workplace, to start with, or at Thanksgiving, at Thanksgiving dinners, and that kind of thing, where it can get nasty pretty quick.
Yeah. No, I haven't had that experience personally. Just because I haven't talked to very many people about it. The coworker that I was talking with is in her 60s, and she's a very nice person. She wasn't cruel or anything.
Right.
She just really said, she was genuinely asking why, and once I explained, she said, no, I had not thought about it. She just really thought eggs were the hens laying the eggs. It was natural and normal, and it's just you take the eggs and it's no big deal. She's I guess she really has never seen footage like that.
So, the flip side of this, you just said in there that she's never thought about it. We saw a video from a very, very fat guy, very, very overweight guy who had converted to veganism. And he said of himself that before he watched this movie, he had just never thought about it. He never thought about where meat comes from, basically. I've got to say, for me again, ultimately the problem there is not where meat comes from. The problem is, what kind of person are you? What kind of person you want to be?
Thought about it, yeah.
Well, no, but who are you? Who gets to the age of 50, maybe he's 40, I don't know. I don't know. But who gets to the age of 40 never thinking about where milk comes from or never thinking about where hamburger meat comes from?
Yeah.
You know, really? Like, you know, now again, I think he's being sincere. I don't think that guy's lying.
Yeah.
He seemed to me completely sincere and just saying he'd never thought about it. But like, dude, that says something about you intellectually. That says something about you morally. That says something about you. And if you fundamentally lack the sense of curiosity, the sense of moral responsibility, you know, sense of awareness, I don't know what other, you know, nouns and adjectives to throw in here.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you're lacking, I think you've got to examine who you are or who you were as a younger person, and now in the future, what kind of person, you know, do you want to be?
Yeah, there were multiple things that came up that she said that she had not thought about. One was she asked if I liked chocolate because they had some dessert for my boss's birthday. It was also not vegan, so I couldn't eat it anyway, but we were talking about chocolate because she really likes chocolate. And I was saying, you know, I usually don't eat chocolate because of the human rights violations that happen. And, you know, there is a list online of fair trade certified and that type of certification. But even then, you know, I don't eat much chocolate anyway. But anyway, yeah, that was another thing that she said she had not thought about. And also, my winter coat that I bought is also...
She got an ultra ethically sourced winter coat.
Yeah, from Patagonia. They actually show video of the factory.
The labor conditions and so on,
Right. So, yeah, two things that, you know... I don't know if it's just now this generation of people that are coming up, they're more aware of these issues, or if it really is just something that...
No.
Or they just believe everything is ethical, or like, you know, they buy into the lies that the eggs are.
If we were having this question in 1970 with a much larger camera filming it, the reality is that discourse was dominated by communists. Communism and socialism, you know, those questions of where do things come from, how are they made, factory conditions, those were huge political and ethical issues. But they were weaponized by the far left. Now, I think they still are. I think, you know, my colleague here on YouTube, Privileged Vegan, I think she's trying to play the same game of trying to turn that into, however you want to say it, a political weapon, or, you know, she's trying to make propaganda out of these kind of isolated facts about capitalism and so on. So that still goes on. But no, I think there's a fundamental human impulse to ask, and all children do. I did it every day as a child. Where does this come from? How was it made? I was interested in how boxes were made.
Yeah.
You know, where does a cardboard box come from? What is this? You know, it's so fundamental to human nature, with the exception of maybe children that are severely retarded. I've worked with retarded children a little bit. Like, if you're only moderately retarded as a child, they still ask those questions. You know what I mean? It's pretty close to the core of human nature and pretty close to universal. So no, I can't really excuse any generation, you know, from lacking that basic engagement with reality.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that's it. I mean, I think you and I both, I mean, there's no reason to divide vegans into camps, but I think there is a sense in which you and I both, you know, don't think the future of veganism is going to be defined by debate. You know what I mean? It's not something that can be won or lost in debate. And, you know, and that's okay. I think there are a lot of questions, you know, within veganism that we really need to debate, you know, whether it's vivisection or pet ownership or what have you. But
that's why I liked your channel so much, because you were talking about these issues that other vegan channels, you know, other vegan channels focus on trying to get people to turn vegan.
Yes.
And, or, you know, pandering to audiences who are already vegan and they want to, you know, just discuss with each other why a vegan diet is so healthy and wonderful. But your channel actually talks about these issues, and you know, it's worth debating all of the issues. Right.
I mean, you and I, just in conversation today, a couple of different kind of bright lights from veganism came up. I mean, these different books come in and out of fashion. The Skinny Bitch Diet, that was a big deal, I think, about 5 years ago. I would say it peaked 5 years ago. Obviously, the book's still around. You know, Dr. Greger's How Not to Die. These different kind of, you know, approaches to veganism come and go. And I do think, I mean, I think basically fundamentally I want to learn from both the successes and the failures of the different, you know, steps taken by vegans in different directions. And there's a lot of debate that goes into that. But in terms of my interactions with meat eaters in my own family, in the workplace, at university, because I still spend a lot of my time in universities. I'm still a university student in some sense. For me, it's not something debatable. It's not something you can win or lose or debate. And ultimately, it's not even about veganism, and it's not even about eating meat. It's about who am I, who are you, what kind of person you want to be. And that's why they're talking to me. Ultimately, they want to get to know me. And so, whether you're positive or negative, because you can talk about these things in an honest way that's really dark, but, remember, you're not really introducing veganism. You're introducing yourself.